So we're talking volume crying here. And
Wow.
when I raised my head, the room was empty. Like I cleared this whole room out. These guys, they're like, this guy's a nutcase. And I looked into the back right corner of that room when I lifted my head, and something spoke to me. And you can call it God or the universe or a collective unconscious or an energy field or whatever. And it said two things to me. It said, you're not living with a sense of purpose, and your life is only about you.
Mm.
And I mean, I still have goosebumps every time I tell the story. I knew in that moment that my life had changed forever because I knew what my purpose was. I knew why I was here. And, is that really those two things that, I knew what my purpose was, and I knew my life would never go back to being the same. And that really started me on this journey of, that I'm on now. And it changed everything. It showed me that our lives can change for better or for worse in an instant. 2, 3.
Welcome back to the Transform Your Mind to Transform Your Life radio, podcast, and television show. I'm your host, Life Coach Marina Young, and sitting in the guest chair today is Matt Dawson. Matt and I are going to be talking on the topic Strength in Surrender, how to face your fears. Welcome, Matt.
I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
You're very welcome. All right, so Matt Dawson, or Dawson, as he likes to be referred, is an M&A investment banker, corporate investor, and small business operator turned 6 times world endurance adventure athlete. He's also a sought after public speaker, lifestyle performance mentor, and founder of Dawson's Peak Foundation. Dawson's purpose lies in helping people live more authentic, meaningful lives based on purpose and service to others. Known for the concept of strength in surrender, his philosophies help individuals to face their fears and challenges so they can truly understand how to earn their lives, give their lives, and live their lives. Dawson has completed expeditions on every continent, including summiting the 7 summits, which are the highest peaks on each continent, skiing to the South Pole, traversing the Mojave Desert, and rowing across the Atlantic Ocean. My goodness. Following his freshman year at the United States Naval Academy, Dawson graduated from the Wharton School of University of Pennsylvania. Following college, Dawson trained to play professional football and received multiple contract offers. Wow, you are an exceptional athlete, definitely an overachiever in every field. My goodness. I know we talked about the Himalayas here, but I'm going right outside my notes here, but have you hiked the Himalayas?
Yeah. No, look, I appreciate your kind words, and look, I'm very fortunate enough to have the opportunity to have done some things in my life. And we talked for a second before we got on. Look, everybody can do all this stuff. It's simple. You might, not everybody may climb Everest or row the ocean, but it's simply a matter of making a decision to apply ourselves and to get after it. And so we all have it within us. And to answer your question, I've been to into the Himalayas twice. First, when I trekked there in 2016, where I kind of had a breakdown and breakthrough and discovered the purpose in my life and how I wanted to, the impact I wanted to have on others. Then when I went back in 2021 and successfully climbed Mount Everest. And I love the Himalayas. If anybody ever gets a chance to go, you need to go. Even if it's just to trek around. Don't even worry about climbing mountains. It's just an incredible, inspirational place.
Yes. I've read several books about people that climbed Mount Everest, and I was so fascinated that one of my goals, it's no longer my goal. We're really off topic here, but hey, let's go with it. One of my goals was to go to base camp to
Yeah.
just, because base camp is a hike as well. I mean, you know better than me, but that was one of my goals to go to base camp because I was so fascinated about people wanting to climb Mount Everest, what they did to climb Mount Everest. I remember one of the books I was reading, this guy was climbing the mountain and he sees some guy on the side and he says he knows that he's done with and he's going to die. And then I was reading a book the other day and the guy says, I'm going to climb Mount Everest. If it kills me or I'm going to die, I'm going to be on the side.
Right.
So that is the mindset that I love. And of course, I mean, I've read a lot of books by the Navy SEALs and Navy SEAL talk about staying hard, like, David Goggins and
Right.
staying hard. So I'm really fascinated and inspired and have a deep respect for people that push themselves, push their bodies, go to the limit. And you're one of those individuals. So, all right, that was just our intro. So, got totally off topic here, but I'm impressed. So, I just had to say that.
No, and look, I appreciate it. And what I've found, and I know we'll get back on topic just very quickly,
That's
is
right.
what I've found is where we all think our limits are. So our perceived limits, more times than not, is I've got, or actually I shouldn't say that. Every single time I've gotten there, and I see that there's nothing there. It looks like it's going to be this concrete barrier or stone mountain that you can't get past, and I get there, and I'm like, there's nothing here. And so I'm like, oh, maybe it's over there. There it is. And I go there and nothing's there. I mean, there certainly are
Yeah.
points where our
Oh, I know.
bodies physically can't perform anymore. But mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and even physically to a large degree, we are all capable of so much more than we give ourselves credit for. But to your point, it's simply a matter of making the decision, come hell or high water, I'm going
Yeah.
to make this happen.
Yeah.
And you just have to make that decision and work to see it through.
It's true. You're right. It's all mental. And that's basically what we're going to be talking today about, strength and surrender and facing your fears because it is all mindset. And this is basically what I teach here because yes, if you make a decision to do something and you say I'm going to I'm going to climb that mountain or die trying on the side of it, that's what you're saying. It's,
Yeah.
that's what you're going to be doing. All right, so let's get back on topic. So, your bio says that you've completed expeditions on every continent, including summiting the seven summits. Now, how did endurance sports allow you to face your fears? Because I know that without even listen, I have not ever pushed myself where I am breaking barriers and breaking limits. But I do know from the people that I've read, I'm well read, and the space is that it's you're afraid in the beginning, and then you've got to push through it. So yeah, talk about how you endurance sports allowed you to face your fears. And did you have fears before you started
Yeah.
being an endurance athlete?
That's a very interesting question. So, as you mentioned in the bio, is I grew up playing traditional sports. So, it's baseball, football, basketball, a little bit of track, stuff like that. And then I had the chance to play professional football and ultimately walked away before, getting too deep into that. But with that type of training and performance and games, obviously there's fear, but it's more kind of like performance and anxiety. And obviously there's injuries and things, but it's completely different because yeah, look, I had all kinds of broken bones and torn ligaments and surgeries and all that kind of stuff from football. But when something happens, you can call timeout and they bring the medics on the field. They bring the ambulance on the field. They can take you off. The hospital's 5 minutes away. And, everything's over in 3 to 5 seconds every single play. Even in practice, 3 to 5 seconds, everything's over. But when you get into performance, or to endurance athletics rather, and the type of stuff I'm doing, and 100% of my training is done alone. So I've spent a lot of time alone in the mountains, and this stuff you're training for hours and hours and hours on end. And especially when you're out in the mountains, there is no off switch or there's no timeout in the mountains. So if I'm trying to climb something and all of a sudden an avalanche comes, I can't say, referee timeout, get me out of here. You've got to deal with it. So
Hmm.
it's when you're doing this stuff for so many hours in places where you can't control so many of the variables, it brings up a lot of just deeply held, interpersonal things that we're working through a lot of times subconsciously we're not aware of. So there is a lot of fear that comes from that. And then there's like life, there's so much that's outside of your control.
Hmm.
So you've got a choice. You're either going to let that crush you, or you're going to say, look, I'm going to control what I can control. Whatever outside of my control is going to remain outside of my control. And I'm not going to worry about it. I'll try to deal with it best I can, but I've got a task to get on with. And I'm just going to shut up and get to work. So so there is a lot of fear that comes with it. So you either have to figure out a way to get past that, or this isn't the right game for you. It's really
Yeah,
that
but
simple.
right, but it's true. So what you're saying is that you were in these mountains alone, and the thought would come to your mind that, hey, what happens if something happens to me and I'm out here alone? And then you would, I'm paraphrasing,
Yeah.
then you would say to yourself, well, if it happens, it happens, but I'm not going to worry about it. So that is kind of facing fear. So how do you get there to say, I'm just going to leave it up to God. I'm going to leave it
Right.
up to the universe, and I'm not going to fear something. I'm just going to be prepared
Yeah.
as much as I can. I'm just assuming that's the space you're in, but
Yeah.
tell
No,
me
look,
if I'm wrong.
you said it absolutely perfectly.
Mhm.
It's a matter of preparation. So
Mhm.
for all the climbs that you reference as part of Project Seven for Soldiers, which you mentioned, all those climbs were done on teams, or at the very least was me and one other person, me and a climbing partner. But
Mhm.
that being said, all my training, all my everyday training, where I've trained for literally thousands of hours over the years, that has 100% been done alone. So I've spent, I mean, just hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours alone in the mountains. And
Mhm.
I really did that I prefer to train alone because I want to prepare myself mentally and emotionally as well as physically to perform to the best of my abilities without having someone else there, where I've
Mhm.
got to make all the decisions, whether it be my safety or my performance. So to the point that you made is you simply prepare for this kind of thing by doing it over and over and over and over and over. So when I get into these positions on expedition is I'm confident in my physical abilities that I'm capable of achieving the goal I'm trying to achieve. And then, being alone for so long is uh, you gain the experience of I have a good understanding of what I'll do in case X, Y, or Z happens. But
Mhm.
again, to your point, sometimes things happen that you're not prepared for. Sometimes things happen you are prepared for, but to a magnitude or at a time where you can't guard yourself against them. And sometimes if it's your time, it's your time, and I don't care who you are,
Yeah.
it's just your
Yeah.
time. So I've got
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah.
I've got enough to deal with in my mind to where I can't worry about that kind of stuff. It's just
Mhm.
you've got to just resign yourself to it and can basically just focus on what you can control, and the rest of it, like you said, is let Jesus take the wheel, and it's out of your hands.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. Well, that's basically a great philosophy, not only as an endurance athlete, but as anything. There's a lot of people that live with fears. And I was watching a Netflix documentary the other day where this woman she was in Puerto Rico, and the hurricane was coming. And she was there with her three small children. And she had such a fear that her house was going to blow away and her kids were going to die and all that. So she survived, but she came out of that experience very fearful. And what they did for her is they signed her up as a first responder so that she can face the fear of the unknown, face the fear of injury, face the fear of whatever. So a lot of times, yes, as you keep going and being alone and you face each fear and you knock it down, then you're building up your strength
Right.
you're bringing up your strength I want to say strength and surrender, which is my next thing I want to talk about. But you're bringing up your confidence. You're bringing up the fact that, hey, you know what? I'm physically able, I'm mentally able. And if there's an avalanche and it buries me, nothing I can do about it, right? Is
Right.
that the way you do it?
That's it. Is to paraphrase an Aristotle quote, is that we are what we repeatedly do. So if you repeat, like just like that lady's a great example, if you repeatedly, going back into these situations that were creating fear and anxiety, and now you're learning how to be proactive
Hmm.
and to manage them to the best of your abilities, but then understand there are elements you can manage and elements you can't manage. It's just, you're able to take that to every facet of your life.
Oh, that's beautiful. Yeah, I mean, I wasn't, you summarized it perfectly. That was not what I got out of it. I just, thought her fear, the more times she faced her fears, then the less it will be. But I like the way what your take on it was that you are what you do, and every time you do it, and you face that anxiety. I
Yeah,
guess it's the same thing. You get it becomes
it,
it
it, really,
becomes
it really is.
diminished. Right.
Exactly. Another great example is Alex Honnold, who's the guy that climbed El Cap and free solo, which was a big success a couple years ago.
Hmm.
And he climbed 32, 3,300 feet solo with no ropes, free solo up El Cap. And everybody's like, "Oh, this guy's crazy. Something's wrong with his brain, or something's right with his brain to allow him to do it." And he's talked about. He's like, "Look, he's like, I've been doing this so long. He's like, and I practiced every single one of these holds hundreds or thousands of times, where he knew exactly. I mean, he knew every single hold on the entire route, and just did it
Wow.
again and again and again and again until he got it down." And that's
That's
not to say it's
beautiful.
not easy, because I think it's one of the most extraordinary things a human has ever accomplished. But
Yeah.
that's how he was able to do it. He didn't just go out there and say, "Hey, there's a
Gotta
rock.
climb it.
I'm going to climb
Right.
it." Yeah. So
Yes.
all this
Yes.
stuff kind of works together.
That's amazing. All right. So how does strength and surrender correspond to what we're talking about? And how can we use the strength and surrender to overcome our personal
Yeah.
struggles, which is one of the things that you teach?
Yeah. No, I appreciate you asking that. And it has been the most integral part of my success, both, professionally in these endeavors, and then personally in getting through a lot of the things that I faced, all the couple of things that I brought from childhood that were really kind of holding me back. And most people assume if someone's getting out and they're climbing mountains and rowing oceans and crossing deserts, it's all about strength and power and force. And I'm going to bend the universe to my will and all this kind of stuff. And there's certainly a time for that. There's a time to run through walls and to, all this kind of stuff. But what I've found as my greatest strength and understanding has come not from fighting everything, but learning how to surrender into my fears and hesitations.
Mhm.
I'm not surrendering to them, meaning I'm just allowing them to run over me. I'm surrendering into them, which enables me to face them, allow them to come into me. I experience them to their absolute fullest, but most importantly, I don't allow them to take root within me. I don't allow them to become part of me, to change me, and I'm able to release them through the other side, kind of like a cloud moving into you and then through you. And
Mhm.
that's what we talk about is surrender, and how to gain strength in surrender, where you see your fears, you're experiencing them, so you're not avoiding them, but then you're allowing them to move through you and let them go. And then that way it's not something that's kind of sitting out there causing you trepidation or hesitations. You've experienced it, you've released it, now you can move on to whatever's coming next. And like I said, that's been by far the greatest gift and understanding that I received from all these expeditions that I've gone through.
Yeah, but explain that because fear makes people anxious. Fear is, I don't even know another word to explain it, is that a lot of people don't sit still and feel their fear,
Right.
right? It makes them anxious. So what is the mindset that allows you to say, you know what, I'm afraid and I'm just going to let it pass through me. Now, I
Right.
understand the concept because, I do a meditation where they're saying, think of your thoughts as colored balloons and let them float away. And I'm understanding basically what you're saying. But fear is not meditation.
Right.
Fear, I'm like, for instance, I have a son-in-law that's afraid of bridges, and apparently a lot of people are afraid of bridges. I mean, I thought he was the only one, but it's got a name. So people are afraid of bridges, and how do you let that fear wash through you? Give me an
Right.
example.
I get it. So in the book that is coming out on January 7th, Strength and Surrender, is the entire process is just kind of outlined of here it
Okay.
is, what it is, how to do it, and all this kind of stuff. So all that detail is in there.
Okay.
But to kind of break it down and simplify it for our conversation is, one of the biggest kind of questions is, what are we trying to achieve with the surrender and releasing of the fears? And it's finding ways of meeting our needs in more beneficial ways, because that's what we do as life, is find ways of meeting our needs, and in more beneficial ways is kind of is what's coming through with the surrender. And the big question is, what do we surrender into? It's sort of like, okay, I'm ready to surrender. Well, what does that mean? And like what facing the fear of the bridges or whatever it is. And the basically what we surrender into is the unknown. It's like what's on the other side of our fear, what's on the other side of what's driving this fear of the bridge, because it's not the bridge has nothing to do with it. There's something else that's behind the bridge. So
Hmm.
it's sitting down and getting quiet with yourself and working with yourself and working with others to understand what is the unknown portion of whatever this fear is. Maybe it's a fear of abandonment, maybe it's a fear of not having security, maybe it's a fear of not being in control. Maybe it's those types of things. So it's not a matter of just facing whatever fear is directly in front of us. It's understanding what is that unknown that's kind of sitting there behind it, and then how can I meet my needs in new and beneficial ways? Because one way of meeting his need of the bridge fear could just be avoiding bridges. It's like,
Yes, which
I'll
is
just
what they
avoid bridges
do.
my whole life, right? So, and that's what most of us do. And it's so, but it's there's different ways of dealing with those fears, and that's what we talk about. With surrender. But like I said, it, it's a big conversation.
Yes.
It's a longer process, and
Hmm.
all that is outlined in as much detail as I've come up with in the book. So I'd invite people to kind of read that. But that's kind of like a general overview.
Well, that's actually pretty good because I'm looking at him and I'm saying to myself, do you think the bridge is going to collapse and you're going to fall in the water and die? It's just like people that are afraid of the airplane. They're
Right.
thinking that it's going to crash down to earth, but you just said something else. That's not really what they fear. That's pretty
Right.
good. I love that. So
Yeah.
once you sit down and try to get on the other side of it, that's amazing. You might find something else is lurking along there, and the bridge is just a symbol.
Right.
Good. Right. Because how many times I think there's one time where a bridge collapsed in my memory.
Yeah.
And that's when a ship hit it, right?
Yeah.
Remember that in
Oh yeah, I
Boston?
remember that. Yeah.
Right, right.
But
Mhm.
typically what happens is when we're somewhere between like 3 years old and 8 years old, 10 years old, is one of the most impactful parts of our lives. That's really where our brain is really getting hardwired. And then later in life, when things happen, normally we're not reacting to those direct situations. We're re-reacting to what happened to us earlier on. So it's like,
Yes.
if I'm dating someone and she shows up 15 minutes late and I blow a gasket, I'm generally not reacting to her being 15 minutes late. It's because my father failed to show up when I was 4 years old, and
Right.
now it's a sense of worthlessness, that I'm not valued, that I can't rely on people, that I'm all alone.
Yes.
That's what it's bringing back up. So the bridges are like getting in elevators or flying or bugs. It's typically that type of stuff.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah.
Wow. Love your book. Love your book. Right. Maybe I will definitely pick up a copy and give it to my son-in-law. It's amazing. All right. So you mentioned earlier that when you talk about your fears and surrendering and all that, it was some physical and emotional shifts that you had to go through part of your childhood, I'm assuming.
Right.
So what how did your adventures allow you to break through that ceiling? You didn't say
Yeah.
that. That's my words.
Yeah. No, it's a very interesting question. Is this type of stuff, that I've been on, the training required for it, and all the expeditions, it's very long, lonely, hard, monotonous work. And when you're doing this kind of stuff, is you can't BS it, and you can't hide from yourself. So it's like the expeditions and all the training is I'm doing them for the physical purposes, but more than that is I'm using them as a tool for self exploration. So when
Mm,
you're out there, I'm alone on, 12,000 feet up a mountain for, 10, 12 hours. You can't BS yourself too long.
mhm.
You're dealt that you're rare with yourself. You can't hide from yourself. So it's just, I've just learned, to use these as a tool of self-exploration. And that's just enabled me to just really understand myself on a deeper level and see, the things I like and a lot of things I don't like. And I think that, where I'm BSing myself, and we kind of joke that it's kind of a Trojan horse, everything we're doing
Mhm.
to facilitate a deeper conversation about purpose and about the impact that we want to have with our lives and about the role that we want to play in the world and how we want to impact others. And this transition from living a self-centered life to a service-centered life. And it really is these expeditions. They're all well and good on their own, but they're really a Trojan horse for this deeper conversation of personal exploration, and then how do you apply that to ultimately elevate the lives of others.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. So the concept is, I'm assuming that when your body is so tired that things can come through your mind that if you weren't so tired, maybe you might block it. Is that what happens?
Yeah, it does. Because listen, most of us, is we wake up at whatever time, we get on the cell phone, we turn on the music, we drink coffee, we turn on the television, we start returning to emails, we start listening. It's like whatever. It's like we're doing everything we possibly can, consciously and subconsciously, to avoid ourselves, to just
Mm,
inundate ourselves constantly with exterior
mm,
stimuli.
right.
So when I'm out in the mountains or I'm rowing or whatever, is I never take anything. There's no music, there's no books, there's no pot, there's no
Mm,
nothing. And I can't tell you how many times that I've been climbing and something will pop in my head from when I was 4 years old.
yes.
You know,
It
and,
comes
and
through. Right.
yeah, it's like
Hmm.
we love to believe that we're 95% conscious and 5% subconscious when we're the exact opposite. We're a thin layer, a thin crust of consciousness in this tremendous, base of subconscious. And it's
Yeah.
about putting ourselves in a place, physically and emotionally and psychologically, to allow that to come through.
Yeah.
And because we have so many of these answers inside of us, but we either can't hear ourselves or don't know how to listen to ourselves.
Right. Yes, I mean, I understand that. Because yes, when your body is tired or when you're concentrating on maybe staying alive on a mountain, you're right. That's when stuff is going to pop through. And then because you got nothing else to do, a lot of times when stuff pops through, you might makes you feel bad because it's not a pleasant memory. And then what do? You try to stuff it down, like you drink something, you turn on something, you
Right.
you know what I mean? But yes, when you're on the mountain or when you're rowing or when you're doing whatever, right, you allow it to come through and maybe you sit with it. And
Right.
I love that's where you sit strength and surrender
Yeah.
because you surrender, you let it sit with you and
Right.
you feel it, and then it can change you. So which brings us to, you said that on one of these times you were on a trek to the Himalayas. You started our conversation with it, but it's one of the questions I have here. And something came through, I'm assuming, that sparked your transformation and allowed you to start facing your
Mm-hmm.
fears. You want to tell us about what happened there?
Yeah, and feel free to tell me to hit the fast forward button at any point, because it's a longer story, but I'll condense it down. But
Okay.
it was in 2016, and I was in a good place in my life professionally, as I was living in the Hollywood Hills, and it
Nice.
had made enough money to be comfortable and all this kind of stuff. But I was just in a very, very dark place. I was very disconnected. I had this emptiness inside of me that had been there for many years, and I couldn't communicate it effectively. So like no one knew about it. My friends didn't know about it. Family didn't know about it, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger. And my mother passed. My girlfriend and I broke up, and I knew it was time for a change. And I was at such a bad place when I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. Is I was either ready to check in or to check out. Like I mean, I was really at that point. So I went to Nepal. I'd never had any type of experience in this stuff before. Went to Nepal alone and spent 3 weeks trekking around the Mount Everest region, around the Khumbu region. And on that trip, I was in a tiny village called Tengboche, where it's the largest monastery in the area is located there. And I was invited to join a Buddhist service. So I'm sitting in this absolute picturesque, like imagine something out of a Hollywood movie, and that's what this place looks like. I'm in a room alone with chanting monks for about an hour, and all I want to do is just work on just being present and just like you said, sitting with myself and just being still. And they were just the chants began to hit me with these waves of energy where it was difficult to breathe. Like
Mm.
it was just a different experience I'd ever had before. After that is I left and I was sitting on the ground leaning against a stupa, which is a small religious temple. A little while later, looking at Mount Everest, which was still 4 days away, but she's so big you can clearly see her.
Mhm.
And it's probably 7 in the morning. The clouds are rising, or the sun's rising. The clouds are going across the face. I mean, it looks like a movie. And out
Mm.
of nowhere is I just lose it and start bawling uncontrollably like a child. And I
Mm.
lay over on my left side in the dirt, and there's just spit and snot and just, I mean, it's just ugly.
Wow.
I was in so much physical and emotional pain that I was just knotted up in a ball and just, I mean, just shaking violently and crying. But luckily something inside of me said, don't try to understand this. Don't try to fight it. Whatever this is, you need this. So I just took it, and it lasted maybe 15 minutes. And I mean, I had a big beard, down to here at the time. I was 40 pounds heavier, some all, big guy and everything. And I get up, I'm like, what the hell was this? I'm going crazy. And I went into a tea house where I was staying, like a little, hotel kind of thing. And they bring me a bowl of oatmeal to have breakfast. I'm sitting in a dining area. I go to take a bite, and I just start losing again.
Balling
And just,
again.
I mean, just bawling. And there's probably like 10 people around me. And now I'm embarrassed because I feel like I look like an idiot. I'm just crying everywhere. So I cover my face and I'm bawling into this bowl of oatmeal. And I remember crying so long and so hard. I watched my tears fill up that bowl of oatmeal. So we're
Wow.
talking volume crying here. And
Wow.
when I raised my head, the room was empty. Like I cleared this whole room out. These guys, they're like, this guy's a nutcase. And I looked into the back right corner of that room when I lifted my head, and something spoke to me. And you can call it God or the universe or a collective unconscious or an energy field or whatever. And it said two things to me. It said, you're not living with a sense of purpose, and your life is only about you.
Mm.
And I mean, I still have goosebumps every time I tell the story. I knew in that moment that my life had changed forever because I knew what my purpose was. I knew why I was here. And, is that really those two things that, I knew what my purpose was, and I knew my life would never go back to being the same. And that really started me on this journey of, that I'm on now. And it changed everything. It showed me that our lives can change for better or for worse in an instant. Sometimes they will never go back to being the same. And
Wow.
I understand really for the first time the power and the magnitude of every single second.
Right.
Yeah.
That is really amazing because just yesterday, my pastor preached a message talking about encounter with God. And as soon as you started your story, I recognized that you had an encounter with God because, that my encounter with God has always to do with crying and laughing at the same time. And I understand when you talk about the bawling and the crying, but yes, you had an encounter with God. And what the message was that my pastor is saying that when you have an encounter with God is when you're transformed. It's really interesting. And he was talking about, afterwards, I said to him, that's what I do, transform your mind. He says, yes, once you have an encounter with God, you are transformed. And that's what happened with you. So that was beautiful, very beautiful. And I'm so glad that it started with the monks because energy is what we are. So the chanting of the monks must have opened up your
Right.
energy field to receive. And then, of course, you're in the mountains. I mean, I'm not sure. I mean, you know, God is in the mountains, but he's everywhere. But that was beautiful. Yes.
That's it.
Encounter with God. When you tell the story again, that's how you frame it.
Yeah. That's funny that y'all just had that sermon. So it's good timing.
Just yesterday.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
just yesterday. And as soon as you started talking, before you even got to the end, I knew that exactly what happened with you because when you're bawling and you're crying and sometimes laughing and crying at the same time, that's what happens when you have
No,
an encounter.
yeah, no, look, you said it very well. And really that when I look back on it, that was the first time in my life I truly surrendered. Because
Yeah.
up until that point, is my mentality was always I'm going to overcome everything. And everything was just a fight to the death. And I don't care what it was. And
Mm.
everything felt like a life-threatening situation because of just a lot of the challenges I faced growing up. And it wasn't until years later that I looked back and I was like, that was surrender. As I surrendered into that moment, and I was able to gain the strength. And that
Yes.
happened. That happened a couple more times, and that's how I began to understand this concept of strength and surrender, was by going through it so many times and
Yes.
not understanding it. I'm like, wait a minute, there's a trend here I'm seeing, and then working to understand what that was. Yeah.
Yeah, well, yes. Also, when there's a meditation that I do. It's called Let Go and Let God. It's the same as surrender. You
Mm-hmm.
let go and surrender. So, wow. So that is great. God said that you're living for yourself. And that's basically how you transformed. Your transformation is now, instead of living for yourself, now you're living to serve, which is basically what we're all here to do. We're
Right.
here. So you started, your company called Dawson's Peak Foundation. I love that. You like mountains, you like peaks. So that is great. So tell us about your foundation, what you do, and how people can connect with you.
Yeah, no, certainly. So, yeah, Dawson Speak Foundation, we're a fully licensed, recognized 501(c)(3), and full compliance, so a public charity. And our mission is to inspire the discovery and pursuit of individual purpose. And what that means is that we're all capable of living lives to a greater extent. So, what I'm doing is certainly not unique. We're all capable of this, and getting people to understand that we're all so much more powerful than we want to believe. And it's not that our fear of that we're not enough. I think the bigger fear is how strong we actually are, because with that capacity comes a sense of duty. And a lot of people don't want the duty that comes with the capacity.
Mm,
So we're trying to get people to understand that. And then, like you said, is that, why we're here is we're here for two reasons, and two reasons only. We're here to live with purpose and to apply that purpose to elevate others.
yep.
Because if our lives are only about ourselves, then we're not living them to the fullest extent, and we're not fulfilling the reason why we're here. So that's
Right.
what we do as a great organization, is that, and we're our current project, which is called Seven for Soldiers, where I'm trying to set, seven world records. I've been able to fortunately set six so far. We're working with two of the highest rated veteran charities in the country, which is Hope for the Warriors and the Gary Sinise Foundation. So
Mm,
they're receiving 100% of the net proceeds that we raise in the project. So I haven't made a dime. The organization hasn't made a dime. They've received 100% of those net proceeds. So it's a way of illustrating and putting our money where our mouth is, of being a service, to others.
excellent. So is it predominantly for vets? Because it sounds like it.
Right. So yeah, it's a great question. At this point, what we're doing is the organization. We're just having our initial project to kind of put us on the radar, get people aware of us, things like that, where the veterans are benefiting.
Mhm.
After this project, we'll move into providing, classes and seminars and work material to different groups, whether they be
Mhm.
civic groups, schools, individuals, corporations, stuff like that, where people can take kind
Nice.
of courses and seminars, things like that, to learn how to live a life of greater purpose, face fears, identify purpose, all this kind of stuff. So it's going to turn into more of an educational organization, once we kind of establish ourselves, in the market.
That's beautiful. Yes.
Yeah.
Wow. So God is proud of you right now. You listened and turned your life around. And yes, God is all about purpose. He created us with a purpose, and everybody came here with a purpose, and most people don't know what their purpose is. So it's kind of great that you're helping them to find that out and to live a life of service, because really it's the only way that you can be happy.
It is.
That,
Yeah.
that's why you were empty inside, because
Yep.
you were living for yourself. Yes,
Right.
it's the only way you can be happy.
Yeah. There's the old adage that's, it's never too late to become what you might have been. And I was 38 years old before I got on this track.
Mm.
And so it's really, it's never too late.
No, it's never.
So when people feel like, oh, I've gotten to this point or that point or whatever point, I'm like, that's just an excuse, not to start doing something.
No, I agree. It's never too late. Right. We were just looking at Betty White the other day. Her career started in her 70s. So,
Yeah.
so yes, it's never too late. I've interviewed a gentleman that was 89 and he's writing books and doing things too. Yeah, that's a very bad excuse. All right, awesome. So give us your website. Tell our listeners how they can connect with you, what's your social media handle, and
Yeah.
yeah, how they can be a part of what you're doing.
The easiest way to get involved is my website is just Dawson's Peak, PEAK.com. That's my personal site that links to our foundation site. Anybody that wants to get active with making donations to Project 7 for Soldiers that'll benefit Gary Sinise Foundation and Hope for the Warriors would be fantastic. You can do that through the site, or to make it easier, you can just text Dawson, DAWSON, to 53555. So I really can't make it any easier there. And then the Instagram is probably the best way to connect over social. It's just at Dawson's Peak, PEAK. And then lastly, as we mentioned a couple times, the book, which is Strength and Surrender, is coming out on paperback, audio, and ebook on January 7th, 2025. It'll first be available on Amazon, and after that on kind of all outlets. And we've already hit #1 new release on Amazon, so excited about that.
Good for you. Yes, this is a book that that it's doing so many things from what I can, just glean from our conversation. It's helping people with their fears, it's helping people with their purpose, it's helping people to get to the next level spiritually. I mean, yes, you're doing a lot of things with your book and your work. And yes, I'm very honored to have you on the show and to highlight and showcase your work and get it out to the masses. So that's amazing. I will have a summary conversation of my conversation with Dawson on the show page, which is myhelps.us. I will link out to his I will link out to his website. I will link out to his book because this will air after the book is live. So I'll link out to his book. I'll link out to his social media. And yes, this is some person that you can definitely learn from and glean from. So connect, and also, yes, donate, help others. If you've got the funds, help others, and also, you can get started in your own journey, but you can also help others get there. So thank you, Dawson, for being on the show. Thank you for this stimulating and inspirational conversation. So as we wrap up, any last words?
Now, listen, I want to thank you again for taking the time to have me on. I've really enjoyed it. I can see you've done a lot of work in this field, so it's always fun to talk to people in that regard. And I appreciate what you said about the book. It really is. It's more than just some guy climbing a mountain or rowing an ocean, because look, that's all well and good, but the purpose here is something more. And it's these
Yes.
these are lessons that I've learned that we can all apply in our everyday lives, even if you don't want to get out and do all the physical stuff. Is that there's certainly lessons and takeaways that everybody can apply in their daily lives. And it's about our shared human experience and how one man has overcome a lot of the things in his lives, and how people can take that and hopefully adapt it and apply it to theirs.
Well, of course, yes. I mean, one of the great things about an endurance athlete is the mindset, right? And you can apply mindset to every single
Right.
thing. So, I mean, yes, you're just using the knowledge from that, and that might even help you. I mean, when I read one of the books that I read was um, uh, You Can't Hurt Me, David Goggins, and he
Oh
was
yeah.
talking about running 100 miles and biking because he was an endurance athlete, not
Right.
mountains and rowing and all that, but running and things like that. And I started trying to run in my 60s. It motivates you. He said,
Yeah.
you can do it.
Yeah.
So yes, I mean, you might, somebody that's in their 30s or 40s and whatever, you might motivate them to get up off the couch and do something because they can. But you're right. For the
Right.
ones that don't want to do that, they can just take the mindset and take it into the
Right.
careers. So
The key
that's
is the key is just to do something. Is start
yes.
overcoming that initial inertia and just
Mhm.
to do something and to keep it moving. Get a little better each day and apply that getting better to help others. And if they do it for you and we do it for them, and that's how we all rise collectively. Yeah. And I'm sorry. Last thing is I forgot to mention the pre-order is currently open on the book. So if someone hears this before January 7th and they can pre-order it, if afterwards, then it's already launched.
And that's on your website, the pre-order.
I'm sorry, it's on Amazon. Thank you for asking that.
Oh, the Amazon is
Yeah,
pre-order. Okay.
yeah.
Awesome. All right,
Awesome.
guys, you heard that. The book is called Strength and Surrender. I'm talking today to Matt Dawson, which is Dawson, and his website is dawsonspeak.com. Of course, I'll link out to that, but if you want to head over there instead of heading to my website, then you can go ahead and do that. So great information. Don't let, hear it and goes through your ears, but, go and pick up a copy of Dawson's book and connect with him and, take your life to the next level. Transform. And if you don't get anything else out of it, to understand, his encounter with God and his transformation. So that's amazing. All right, guys. Well, listen, thank you, Dawson, for being on the show. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. Thank you, guys, for tuning in to this week's episode of Transform Your Mind so you can transform your life. This is definitely a conversation on transformation today. So thanks for tuning in. Until next time, namaste.